Hi there, I'm Paul McLean from McLean Design, and you are listening to US Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to US Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guild. This week, we're back poolside at the swanky US Modernist compound in Palm Springs during Modernism Week 2025. Today's guests are three distinguished men about town. Need a mid-century sofa in green tomorrow? How about a house tour for 25? Or do you need to throw a private cocktail party over at the Dinah Shore house? Who are you going to call? We got a guy. Actually, three guys who make these wonderful kinds of things happen. Christopher Kennedy, Kurt Sear, and Kip Serafin, all coming up on today's show. And now making cool things happen with Architecture Magazine's Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Thanks, Tom. I have learned recently that a lot of our listeners are unaware of the huge online library we have of architecture and design magazines going back 130 years. There are 5 million pages of architecture and design magazines, and the library is so large that stacking the pages would reach a height of 1,640 feet. That's higher than the Central Park Tower in New York, aka the Nordstrom Tower, which is 1,550 feet. Now, just for fun, if you put the pages end to end, it would reach 3,300 miles, or the distance from New York to the UK.
So that's where you were last week.
Yeah, just doing these numbers.
Taping them together.
We've got just about every issue of Architectural Record, Progressive Architecture, Arts and Architecture, Dwell, AIA publications, national, state, and local, academic journals, and over 150 more titles, all free to access, printable, downloadable, and best of all, text searchable. You can enter an architect's name, better do it in quotes, or an address, an engineer, a landscape architect, and boom, you're on the way to finding that inspiring modernist house you've wondered about for decades. Just go to usmodernist.org/library, and for the safety and security of all our patrons, you need to know that the library is highly addictive. You're going to go there at your own risk. People think, oh, I'm just going to look around for a few minutes, and 3 hours later, they are still there. I warned you. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Christopher Kennedy is an internationally recognized designer with a fresh take on California glamour. Based in Palm Springs, Christopher blends modernism with timeless style, creating inviting, livable spaces with features in Architectural Digest, Dwell, The Wall Street Journal, and way more publications than we have time to name. Beyond design, Christopher is an author, entrepreneur, and the creative force behind the wildly successful Christopher Kennedy Compound, a celebrated showhouse event during many years at Modernism Week. We picked Christopher's brain recently, poolside, at Modernism Week in Palm Springs.
If you come into Palm Springs, you're going to hear a lot of names. Names that go by 2 words, like first name and last name. And the name you're going to hear a lot in town is Christopher Kennedy. Oh, Christopher Kennedy this, Christopher Kennedy that, Christopher Kennedy home, Christopher Kennedy store. And with us today, Christopher Kennedy. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Hello, George. I'm thrilled to be here.
Christopher Kennedy, the man. All right.
In the flesh, or at least in the voice.
You have really done a lot for this town and the owners in terms of bringing very thoughtful interior design, particularly over the last, 10 years or so. You became really well known all around the country for the Christopher Kennedy Compound, which sounds like a fun place to be. What was that?
The Christopher Kennedy compound is more of an idea than any singular place. I've actually been in the Valley in Palm Springs for over 20 years, and I've had my design firm for 20. So, sometimes people think that you're this, overnight success, but anyone who's become one knows that there was a lot of whether, it's a musical artist or a movie star or, anyone in their career. It doesn't generally happen overnight. So after 10 years in business here in Palm Springs, I decided that we should have a decorator showcase here in Palm Springs. There's great decorator showcases in, Kips Bay, New York, and the Hamptons, and Dallas, and, Omaha, for God's sake. It was invented in Pasadena over 60 years ago, and I thought, why don't we have one? And sometimes I'm told I don't know what I shouldn't do, so I just decided to do it myself. And I thought, why not call it the Christopher Kennedy Compound? Sure. I have a lot of wonderfully talented friends. I called, some of my well-known designer friends from across the country. I didn't think they'd all say yes. I called brands I knew and loved. I didn't think they'd all say yes. I purchased a home. Didn't think my husband would say yes to renovate it and preserve it. I called a Modernism Week. Didn't think they would say yes, and they did. And they're like, well, shoot, now I have to pull this off. And somehow we managed to pull it off for 6 years, and it was wonderful. It became the most popular event for Modernism Week. It was a different home every year. And before that, Modernism Week was its 10th year. It was my 10th year in business. Before that, it was really very architecture focused, which was wonderful. And you were touring just, existing private homes. And it really didn't have much of an interior design component. And I called 2 magazines who published it. I called, very well-known interior designers like Celery Kemble and Michael Berman and Patrick Dragonette and Jun Ho, and the list goes on. And we really brought the world of interior design into Modernism Week. Had about 5,000 people tour it every year, raised about over $100,000 for Modernism Week every year, and it was a great run. So that was my long answer of what the Christopher Kennedy compound was.
No, that's great. So this was at different places every year.
It was a different home every year.
What was the first one?
The first one was a great 1960s home in Indian Canyons that had been pretty well preserved. It was pretty original, so we purchased it and renovated it. Had hoped to keep it, but the event itself actually took quite an investment, so we didn't end up selling it. And then we actually purchased the second one just to keep the momentum going. And the 4 through 6 years, we had just private clients who were willing to go on the journey with us and just sort of give me the home and let me turn it over to 10 or so of my talented friends, and the results were wonderful.
So you actually lived in some of these?
I lived in the first 2, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a big leap.
It was. It was. And I think what was great about the compounds that people said were different than other decorator showcases is we did really want to make them livable. And a lot of the showcases around the country now are done, by developers for speculation, which is fine. The world has to make money. Everything happens when money gets made. But we were always doing it for ourselves, or the last 4 years for private clients who actually all still own them. So they were, while they were very beautiful and aspirational, bringing together the best of modern technology and amazing interior designers, they were someone's home, and they were livable, and they were lived in and loved.
When you are taking over a home essentially from a client, what are the first typical things you've got to work on to shape up a little bit?
I begin my design process by, our clients don't so much bring to us like Pinterest boards or, tear-outs from the, shelter publications. A few do, but they're generally, busy people either working or donating their time to charity or raising their family. So I actually like to ask them a few key words of how they want their home to feel when we're all done. So I say, homeowner, when we're all done and you have friends over and you're having coffee or cocktails, whatever you prefer, if they say, your home is so kind of fill in the blank, and I ask them for 3 key words or phrases, and to me it's more about how the home feels. There's lots of ways to achieve that. Lots of chairs that could be chosen, or lamps, or architecture. So I sort of start with those words, and that becomes kind of the brand DNA. If it's a gut renovation, which we do a lot of, it's often the floor plan. I have a degree in architecture, so we like to get the floor plan figured out first.
Yes, from Drury University,
Drury
right?
University. Yep,
Go
small.
Panthers.
That's right. Thank you for doing your research. It's a small private college.
Yeah, where is it?
It's in Springfield, Missouri, in the Ozark Mountains.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not far from Branson, if you know the big country.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Capital, and not far from where the TV show Ozark was. Actually,
right.
It was set in
It was set
Springfield,
there. It was filmed
infamously.
in Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yes.
So if I wanted to have a house that was, let's say, I'm trying to pick my 3 words, relaxed and calm and entertaining.
Okay.
So what I need to sort of pay attention to get those 3 things going?
That's a great question. Honestly, can I tell you a secret?
Yeah.
Honestly, after 20 years, it kind of comes down. Maybe my clients are just water that of my level that find me, but water seeks its own level. But it always kind of comes down to some version of modern or contemporary.
Yeah.
Some version of like wow or spectacular, or I just want it to be really cool and comfortable.
Yeah.
So they always kind of break down to that. So while we do strive for homes to be comfortable, I think I like sort of pops of geometric pow. I think a magazine wrote that once, but it's got to be livable. I don't think that it's luxury if it's not comfortable. I mean, maybe the luxury shoes can be uncomfortable with the red bottoms or something, but I think someone's home, I don't think it's luxury to come here on vacation and have to worry about it. So our clients, even if they can afford the best of everything, they don't want to be worrying about it when their dogs or their grandkids or themselves are here on vacation in the desert or wherever they might live.
Or do a lot of work.
Or, yeah.
To have that.
To have to maintain it.
Yeah, a place that's easy to maintain.
Yes. As much as possible. So,
do most of your clients want to entertain in their homes?
Definitely, absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah. Part of my ethos, I guess, it wants to come to the mid-century houses is I don't necessarily want to create a time capsule. I'd kind of tell you a story how that I really learned that early on in my career. I was doing just kind of like a 1970s tract house for this wonderful woman from Chicago, and I was like 28 years old, and I moved here partly because my parents got sick and passed away. That's a different story, but so she always fed me because I was in my late 20s. It was early in my career, and we were like meeting over dinner. She liked to cook. She was Italian, and she asked if her brother could come over and join us. He also had a condo in Palm Springs, and they're a very close family. And he walked in and said he had just purchased the Jack Webb house.
From Dragnet.
From Dragnet. He was the creator, and actually people don't know that he created the show and was the star in the 1960s, and he built this home at the height of his fame as Sergeant Joe Friday in the 60s, and my client had bought it. He was probably close to 60 at the time, and he said, he grew up with all that furniture. He didn't necessarily want to go back and live in his parents' house, but he knew that he needed to respect it and honor it. So for me, it's not about creating a time capsule. I think if I can be respectful, I think we're seeing a bit of a kitchen cliche. Maybe it's the rise of Instagram and Airbnbs, but we're seeing a bit of a glossy sort of cliche Palm Springs that I don't want to emulate that. And if these great mid-century interior designers or furniture designers or architects were living today, they were innovators and they were futurists. They were using new technology and new materials. They wouldn't be resting on their now 60 or 70-year-old laurels.
Yes.
They'd be thinking, how can we push this forward? So for me, it's always about sort of honoring the best parts of the past while, looking at new technology and being, innovative and creative, because that's what they were doing.
And how do you figure out about the colors to use in houses? I noticed in just driving around here this year and going in houses, it seems like orange is disappearing and going out. So I wonder what's coming in.
Can we get an amen on that? No, that's fine. If you like orange, go for it. Orange was sort of never my favorite color. Nothing wrong with it. I tend to gravitate to like blues and greens. I don't do a lot of hot colors. I don't particularly like red, but it's already kind of hot in the desert. So I guess I kind of go for the cool, watery colors. I'm just inspired by the grass and the palm tree tops or the water and the pool and the blue sky. So I gravitate towards those colors from nature that I find a bit more soothing and relaxing, but nothing wrong with orange. There was a great design firm here who really made orange, who really did a great job bringing orange to the people here in Palm Springs. So if it's on its way out, I guess that's okay.
What's happening with technology lately in terms of either what's available inside the house or the materials outside the house? Because as many people know, Palm Springs gets quite hot in the summer. What did you reach, 122 or something last year?
Something.
That's pretty high.
And one of the goals of the Christopher Kennedy compound was to, bring in new technology to these older homes. And the very first one that we did, that I purchased, when we debuted it and had the big gala, it was done by a builder, John Caranci, who was also sort of the architect and the developer. And actually, he and his family built the home. His sons helped him build it, and they lived in it for several years after they built it in Indian Canyons. And we tracked down his widow, who was still living in Palm Springs, and had them come to our gala opening night. And, of course, I was a little nervous about what she might say. And his sons who helped build the house were there with her because we had brought in, new doors and windows, from our brand sponsor, La Cantina, great pocketing and stacking doors that bifold that, accordion and open up the whole walls and things like that. And at the end of the night, she looked at us and she said, everything that you did, my husband would have loved to have done, but we didn't have the technology.
Oh, uh-huh.
And so I think that's sort of what my ethos is when it comes to deploying technology in a new home is, would they have done this if they had the technology and the big expanses of glass? That does get back to climate and something that all of our clients want often is to make the homes brighter, to open up the inside to the outside, which of course was what a lot of the architects working in the desert at the time were trying to do. They were taking the post and beam technology, from the international style and the Bauhaus, and I could give you my history in a minute, but they were trying to open it up to our climate here in California. And then some of the homes in the 70s and 80s were built a lot darker with big overhangs and shutters, and then you kind of realize why, because it's very bright and the sun comes in, and the heat loss or heat gain is significant. And so it's really a double-edged sword of now we have these bigger door and window systems, and everyone wants these big expanses of glass to look at the views, the nature, but it does come with a literal price and the actual cost of the energy.
Well, they've gotten better at glass.
Of course, yes. The glass has come a long way.
Technology that didn't exist in the 50s.
Of course, it does.
Yeah.
It is much better in terms of the solar gain. There is a reason that people sort of wanted to shut out that sunlight.
Are there any other technologies that you work with that are on the scene right now that are exciting for you?
I mean, people love the smart home technology with our compounds. We partnered for several years with Crestron to make it a smart home. You can control the lights and the shades and the music,
and your
all from a
dishwasher,
tablet
I guess,
on the wall.
if you want.
I'm not that fancy, but I know that you can. I know you can have the oven preheat from your phone.
Yeah, you can't have Siri unload the dishwasher.
I'm a simple guy. I just, I like to use it for my phone, and I think
really, I'd love that.
And actually, what is nice is that early on with Crestron, when we worked with them, it literally had to be hardwired. We had to go into the wall. We had to tear into the walls. You had to run literal wires often through our ceilings, which are often very thin. There isn't a whole lot of structure in these post and beam homes. That was the point, to have as little structure as possible. So literally getting the wires to where you wanted them was difficult. Now you can do a lot of the home automation, and it's all wireless just by changing out the actual plugs or outlets or switches. It's actually wireless, which has even come a long way in the 10 years since we started doing our show houses.
If you drive into Palm Springs, you'll see any number of giant windmills for wind power.
Yeah.
And you'll see on commercial buildings, particularly a lot of solar power. I haven't seen that much solar panels on the houses. Is that a thing here, or is that just kind of emerging?
Well, I think that's by design. People don't want to see them. So maybe you're not seeing them because we were successful in hiding them.
Okay.
But definitely solar is a big thing. Our utility bills are incredibly expensive. Give me one glass of champagne, I'll rant about that for 10 minutes, but I have enough coffee to get me going too. But it's incredibly expensive. Our bills are absolutely astronomical.
What is a typical power bill for a house here in the summer?
It could easily be $1,500 to $2,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it's someone's mortgage in another part of the country.
Wow.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
Because you think of this
It
valley.
could be $800 if they're not there. We don't benefit from the windmills, unfortunately. That energy goes elsewhere.
Really? That goes someplace else
It goes
in here?
someplace else.
Oh, man. That is not a good deal.
That's a different conversation. But yes, that is not a good deal. We get to look at them, and which I don't mind, but we don't benefit from the energy. So we have solar on our home. It definitely helps. So we had some great incentives where our energy utility would buy back the energy, and I was about 6 months too late in getting solar panels on my new home, where it certainly helps with my utilities, but they don't pay you back. They buy back the extra energy.
It's the same in our area too. They stopped that program.
Yeah, and of course it's very expensive to put them on. It was over 6 figures to add the solar panels and then to buy the batteries that I need to run my home at night. So it's pretty expensive, unfortunately.
You have to make a lot of decisions when you're working on a house. You've got colors, you've got textures, you've got floors and walls.
Absolutely.
And you've got to get these things all aligned. And then you've got, when that's all kind of out of the way, you've got to make decisions about the art.
Oh, yeah.
So how do you match the art of a house with a house?
Art is tricky because it's so personal and so subjective. Occasionally our clients come to us with a bit of an art collection, but often they're keeping that at their other home. My whole career, I've sort of always done whole homes or whole condos early on. Like, people bought a vacation home and didn't have anything, and how wonderful for me to really just get to create everything. So we don't generally do one room at a time, for better or for worse. We just sort of get to do the whole home. Art is tricky, and it can be very, very expensive, of course. Well, that's a great... Thank you for asking that question, George, because I actually have an artwork collection. I didn't even plant this, George. So we actually have a licensed collection of art through Wendover Art Group. So that since the brand has expanded, we do some licensing of our name and designs to partners across the country. And we have over 500 SKUs that sold through other retailers and interior designers across the country. We have like 500 pieces that are inspired by kind of like the resort photography, a bit Slamarins. some like modern architecture photography with my background in design, some of my own sketches. I'll find local artists that I love and I kind of get to create that and get to bring their work to more people. And of course, they get royalties from it too. We actually filled that void. We created our own collection. My approach will be, we'll usually, for the key pieces in the home and the public rooms, maybe take them to local galleries and support local artists, and then kind of use the secondary pieces like my collection. It's it's production art made in America that's not necessarily fine art that we use in the secondary spaces.
Yeah.
But what do you do if they bring in some piece that they have at their other home, assuming this is now a second home?
Yeah.
And say,
like the Leroy Neiman or something. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The Velvet Elvis.
right.
It doesn't happen very often. Sometimes we'll use it. I'm a big fan of a salon wall. If you see my own TV room in my house, I've sort of loaded up all the pieces I've collected for over 20 years with my husband kind of in one place and made like a whole gallery wall.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll sort of group them together. And sometimes then it's just not about any singular piece. It's about showing off their collection in a hallway or
gold records,
a theater room.
Right.
Generally, it doesn't happen very often, luckily. Now I'll
Okay.
probably have some bad luck since you asked, but
Sorry.
we haven't.
Well,
Actually, we are dealing with a Neiman collection right now, which will be kind of fun, so we'll see. The clients will say, oh, I love this. I get that it doesn't go in this design. I'll keep it in Chicago or Seattle or Los Angeles, wherever their other homes are.
So for people that don't know, tell them who Leroy Neiman was.
Oh.
And why he came to fame.
I don't know that I even know the whole story.
Well, he's a famous
Playboy illustrator.
Yes, that's
well,
right.
yeah.
Playboy.
Well, I think of him as a sports artist.
A lot of golf and a lot of
Joe Namath,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
He
He
did
does
a lot of it's sort of watercolor. It's like hand drawn and then with colors filled in.
They're usually
a lot
pretty
of
vivid.
sports. A lot of sports and
Yeah.
very vivid. A lot of like very primary colors. And I've already said I sort of like tertiary and secondary colors like aqua, close mixed together. His is just very primary and it's very bold.
For Playboy, he
Yes.
was in there for
That's
decades,
right.
I
That's
believe.
right.
Had
And it's
one.
very cool, very collectible. And that's
So
the
you
thing.
just read it for the paintings.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It was an art publication. Just like early on in the 60s, Hefner was one of the first to really promote modernist furniture.
Yeah.
All
Yes,
the,
that would be Hugh Hefner,
Yes,
publisher of Playboy.
publisher
Yes.
of Playboy. Thank you. Yes, my wife, going back to art, for any art that she doesn't like, she makes me hang it in the garage.
Okay.
So I have my own garage art gallery
Yes.
in place.
That works too.
Tell me about the projects that you're working on now, and I also wanted to hear about what you're doing for the Palm Springs Animal Shelter.
We just completed a tour, which was wonderful. We partnered with them, so we debuted a new home the clients had just built. We just finished a 5,000 square foot ground-up construction that was wonderfully modern and new. We finished it in April of 24, and then they hadn't even moved in as it was being completed. We hadn't even done the big reveal. It's a Seattle-based couple. The property across the street from them became available, which is a historic 1971 James McNaughton design. McNaughton was a Hollywood set designer turned architect who designed very Hollywood Regency homes. They were all private commissioned, so there aren't that many of them.
Yeah.
And it had been in the same family for 30 years. And when that became available across the street from them, they snatched it up to help preserve it. So we haven't begun the renovation, so just this past Modernism weekend, but partnering with the Palm Springs Animal Shelter, we debuted both homes. It was like CK something old, something new tour. You saw the big new construction, and then you got to see the before we begin any renovations of the McNaughton across the street. And it was very fun. We sold out at 200 tickets and raised over $30,000
Oh,
for the
wow.
Palm Springs Animal Shelter. So it was really great. And then we'll be documenting the renovation of the McNaughton and sharing it on my social media and blogs and things and looking for various partners to. Our clients just really bought it. They don't know what they're going to do with it. It came with a big tennis court lot that could be great for fundraisers and charities. So our clients really, their only motivation is to preserve it properly, to share it with other like-minded design enthusiasts, and then offer it for various charity events and fundraisers. So wonderful couple, obviously, and a
Oh,
great
wow.
mission they've given us. And so it'll be a long journey. It'll be at least 2 years. So we'll be sharing it along the way.
I remember that a nonprofit used to have some really great parties. I believe, like up above the art museum.
The animal shelter,
Yes.
they've had a lot of fun events. There's one each year called the Faux Fur Ball. So yeah, it's a wonderful animal shelter. It's one of the only no-kill shelters in the region. Just recently, since the fires in Los Angeles, they actually were proactive and went out and really helped empty the shelters in Los Angeles and bring those animals
bring
here
them
to
here.
make
Wow.
room for the animals that were displaced in LA. So I thought it was an especially great time to really support them. It's always a good time to support the Palm Springs Animal Shelter, but given what happened, I really wanted to do that for them right now.
So tell us about your house, Christopher. Do you live in like a Victorian
Yes.
somewhere?
I have the old
hidden away?
Victorian in Palm Springs, yes. I've had a lot of homes over 20 years in Los Angeles, and just in the early on part of the pandemic in 2020, I purchased a new home. It's back in Indian Canyons, where I very much like to live. So Indian Canyons was the first 18-hole golf course in Palm Springs. It was developed in the 1960s, so it's a bit later than all the great kind of 40s and 50s post-war homes that are sort of closer to town. It's not far from town, but it was a bit further on. It was the first 18-hole golf course in Palm Springs. It was effort between the city and the local tribe to really develop this whole neighborhood. Actually, there's a book out on it right now.
Steve Trainin.
Steve Trainin. Just hopefully you'll interview him. It was called Canyon Country Club in the 1960s. It's a great book. Please buy it. He also has a great Instagram called Once Upon a Time in the Desert. So I live in that neighborhood, and it's actually 1978, so it was custom a bit later on in the development of Indian Canyons. We embarked on a long renovation for 2 years and just finished it in 2022. So it's a bit more 70s. I did kind of spiral a bit, George, so when I was doing it, because I've had a lot of nice houses and people know my work, and I've done some great things with color, with turquoise and green, and I was like, what do people think Christopher Kennedy's house should look like? And I got in my own head for at least 6 months about that. And then I realized, get over yourself, Kennedy. The world isn't waiting with bated breath to know what color you're going to paint the front door. No one cares. Or maybe 10 people care. So just calm down, right? It's not a big deal. And I finally decided, sort of to thine own self be true, just to kind of shut the world out, if you will, or to turn off Instagram or Pinterest and just kind of get back to me, as the song goes, to say, like, what do I like? And the home was 1970s, built about the same year I was born. And so I decided to bring back chocolate brown and hunter green. I don't think people think of those as being very Palm Springs colors, but that's okay. So it was sort of brown and green and black and tan.
It's like chocolate mint.
Chocolate mint, I like that. Yes, I do like chocolate mint ice cream. So it was very fun. So kind of in doing that, I kind of developed, I guess,
There's a couple of liqueurs that are chocolate mint, right? Vandermint, I think, is one of the most popular.
Makes me want a White Russian real bad. Right. You can see it on my social media and on my website. It was published in Palm Springs Life last year.
I like going over there because, it's not a huge house.
No,
it's not
the
a great
here,
expanse.
We're not big.
And you have these little sections, like you have this little tiny lawn, really, and this little tiny pool, and everything, though, is immaculate.
You calling my pool tiny, George?
Sorry.
I don't think my pool is that small.
But everything is so immaculate. It's just perfect.
Well, when George Smart comes over, you have to make sure it's perfect. Absolutely. The home is actually 3,200 square feet, which, if I may say, George, is on the large side for a mid-century house. The homes here weren't big, and people think that we're doing these big mansions. And the first ones done in the 50s by the Alexander Construction Company, they were often 1,400 square feet, 1,600 square feet. Then later we grew larger. In Vista Las Palmas, I think that standard floor plan was like 1,680 to 1,800.
Oh, yeah.
Now they're being added on to. So in Indian Canyons, which was more in the 1960s, they were 2,200 to 3,000 square feet was even on the large side. So people often think that we're doing these big fancy homes, and they're not. They might be fancy these days, but they're really not all that big. So we are really maximizing every space, and people are retiring here often from a larger home in a big city, and they're kind of realizing, it's my dream to retire in Palm Springs, but often, the laundry room is in the garage. We didn't, walk-in closets weren't a big thing in 1958, so we're sort of adapting our lifestyle today to these vacation homes in the 1950s and 60s, and it's often a bit incongruous. So we're often working out, how can we adapt for modern life in these mid-century homes?
As you're looking around Palm Springs today, of course, when we're here for Modernism Week, we're talking about Wexler and Cody and Hugh Capter and all of the folks of the past. But who are the architects here today that are putting up structures that you like?
Lance O'Donnell's doing a great job. Sean Lockyer, Mark Daniels.
These are going to be the people that we're really following in 40 years.
That's true. That's
right.
A good point. Yes.
Yeah, we're having seminars on their work.
Yeah, we just finished a house with Lance O'Donnell that was about 5,000 square foot ground-up construction, a great partnership. So, yeah, we're definitely working with the new ones today, yeah.
The pandemic, of course, brought a lot of people here, fleeing Los Angeles, and prices really spiked.
Yes.
How are prices today? Are they leveling off a little bit, or is it still hot?
I think they are leveling off. When I moved here when I was in my late 20s, I was the youngest person at Palm Springs. I'm really not bragging. I came here when I was 27 years old, and 20-some years ago, 27-year-olds were not moving to Palm Springs.
Did they give you a star on the sidewalk?
I got lots of free drinks, I will say that.
Yeah.
But, it was a bit undervalued at the time, really. A lot of our business, and this is from podcasts too, had moved down to Palm Desert just because, people were moving to suburbs for the last 30 to 40 years.
Yeah.
Suburbs were coming up. So I think Palm Springs was a bit undervalued. And now people say, oh, but it's so expensive there. And I'm a bit sorry, not sorry, because to me, Palm Springs, my adopted hometown, it's a world-class resort town. You go to Santa Barbara and you sort of assume it's going to be expensive. You go to Palm Beach, you assume it's going to be expensive. And for the 20 years, we kind of weren't that expensive. And so now I think the prices have caught up with the reputation and the lifestyle, and it is expensive. It's leveled off a bit, but there's a lot going on in the political climate these days too. I think it's still hot, and there's only so much Palm Springs. A lot of people want to move and retire here, and they're not making anymore. They're not making any more mid-century houses, so you have a fairly large demand and a very finite supply.
Christopher, thank you so much for coming by. The website is ChristopherKennedy.com.
That's right, and Instagram at Christopher Kennedy Inc.
We were chatting with Christopher Kennedy.
Originally from Philadelphia and a graduate of Drexel, go Dragons, Richard Kip Serafin moved to Palm Springs 15 years ago and has built a reputation as the go-to guy for A-list celebrities, luxury brands, and Fortune 500 companies. His impressive client list includes companies like Amazon, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Netflix, and Vogue, and that's just a few. If you're in Palm Springs and you need something, I got a guy. Kip Serafin. Welcome, Kip.
Welcome. Thank you.
You have really figured out how to get things done in this town. What got you started here?
Before I moved down, I actually lived in San Francisco and worked for venture capitalists. And I had a bunch of projects, and I did a lot of liquor and wine. And I actually got involved with the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation, helping them with their liquor for their events. And then when I had the opportunity to move, they sold my condo in San Francisco, was rent controlled, and asked me if I wanted to buy it for $2.2 million as a fixer-upper. I said no, thank you, and I moved down here. And then I got on the board for the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation and met all the owners of some of the great historic homes, and I helped them with their events. We did for the Retro Martini Party, which I still do. I find them venues, and we launched our very first upscale Retro Martini Party at the Frank Sinatra House. I got a donated ice sculpture with a luge and the diamond distilled vodka from Pave, and we sold out with a waiting list. Diamond distilled vodka from Pave.
Okay.
Pave vodka.
I don't even know how that works, but it sounds great.
Yeah. And it was fabulous. And it was recession, and we raised the price from $35 all you can drink and Costco cookies and things to a real true gala fundraiser. And we've been doing it ever since for the Retro Martini Party. So then I know all the owners, and they said, well, if you want to do photos or events, let me know. And then that was that. And when I did Louis Vuitton for 1,000 people at the Bob Hope House, we needed a venue for 400 media people to do a media tour. And Leo had just bought the Dinah Shore. And I said, can we use that? And they said, of course. And the director of tourism at the time, Mary Jo Gunther.
I remember her. Yeah, sure.
Who's traveling the world now, said, I can't even bring 400 media people from around the world in here in my budget ever. And we got 1.2 billion media hits with Louis Vuitton in Palm Springs.
It was everywhere.
It was amazing. So that got me onto the thing and all the other clients. And then the wonderful properties that I have, the Dinah Shore Palm Springs Estate, the Ware Estate, the William Holden, the Lautner Compound, and et cetera. And the new Shag House makes for history, celebrity, and then the other one is the Clark Gable Carol Lombard, which is Spanish. So it's not all mid-century, but a lot of it deals with the mid-century architecture.
Well, why don't we start with one of the newer ones, the Shag House. Tell me about that.
Well, the Shag House is a great Chrysler house built in 1958, and it was reimagined by the current owner, Brandon, and then Josh Agel, who is Mr. Shag himself. He does all the prints and paintings, and he's a fabulous designer. He designed almost all the wallpaper, the tile, everything like that. So talented. And then JP, who is a brand specialist. So he got all the different people to bring in their product and custom make product for the house. So it became like a brand house, showcase house. But it's like, I call it a merciful whimsical experience like walking into one of Shag's paintings.
Immersive.
Immersive,
Yeah.
whimsical.
And I've been in there, and it is immersive.
Wow.
You're in a whole different world.
Everywhere you look, there's something. And there's only one true Shag print in the Casita bathroom. And then Josh actually painted the Mammoth Martini on the back of the bar in the den. And it's actually a replica of the outside bar lights and the tiki motif. So it's quite unique, and it's taken off successfully for tours. We do a lot of corporate people there, corporate dinners and things like that. So it's quite unique.
Can you stay overnight?
You can actually stay overnight as well. It's a rental. It's got 4 bedrooms. And in the master casita, the whole one wall is all cocktails from around the world. Pictures of cocktails and liquor.
And there's a real crowd pleaser. I think it's off the dining room, which is a life-size game of Operation. You all remember that from Milton Bradley.
Right.
Where
With
the
buzzer and
guy
the light.
is 5 feet, 6
tall,
feet
yeah.
tall, and his little heart and brain and bones are big pieces that you have this giant set of tongs you're trying to get them out with.
And not only are they big pieces, each piece, instead of a heart, a lung, or whatever, is a different liquor bottle.
Ah, yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that. It's all goes around it. And even the bar stools in the den are drink, drank, drunk. It's just whimsical. Everywhere you look, from floor to ceiling, there's something going on. And it's just quite unique. And it works well together. And it makes for a great conversation party. It makes for a great cocktail party, and beautiful for a tour.
Shag takes his whimsy seriously.
He
Yes, he does.
He does. He's got that knack and design and capturing people. He did the Lautner compound. He did one of the prints, and he actually had Tracy sitting on a chair, Danny as the DJ, who's a beautiful mid-century artist, and he actually put in John Lautner, who had passed away, sitting on the couch, incorporated their first dog, Charlie, and their cat, Lucky, and then Ryan and his wife, Ty, and their little girl. So it's a great print to have, and I actually have that in my living room, reminiscent of a property that I love dearly. That's a beautiful mid-century, and great architect John Lautner. And, you know, again, Shag does that. And a lot of the Shag prints, if you look closely, there's the one, the Gans house, Morse.
Yeah, Joan and Gary Gann.
Joan and Gary are in there. If you look closely, you see them in the living room in the painting that he did of that beautiful house with the sunken bar that you swim from the pool outside right up to the bar in the living room, which is quite unique.
The swim-up bar was one of those marvelous innovations of mid-century.
It's wonderful. The other thing, too, is the original Cody house, family house, with the sunken living room. Although the sunken living room nowadays, to me, is a big safety hazard. People are drinking, they're not looking where they're walking, and, you know.
Well, it was a big safety hazard back then, wasn't
Yes,
it, too?
absolutely.
Right.
It's persevered.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, that was before we cared about safety.
Yeah.
If you fell and hurt yourself at a party holding your drink, that was just a badge of honor.
It's
right.
And then people, you know, with their drinks and their food walking around. And again, it's great that we get to share some of the homes for corporate events, photo shoots and film shoots and stuff. And one thing that I want to mention too is the Dinah Shore, Palm Springs estate built by Don Wexler, is going to be the establishing shot in the new TV show Mid-Century Modern, which is the take on the Golden Girls, supposedly filmed in Palm Springs. So it's going to be the establishing shot.
Oh, great.
Yeah, with Nathan Lane and Linda Lavin. Unfortunately, before she died, she did 7 episodes. So that's going to air, and that's supposed to be a big hit.
Mid-century modern, huh?
It's MCM.
It's like Golden Girls for men.
Yeah.
It's the gay. Yeah, it's these gay guys meet at a funeral. Not Linda's, but they meet at a funeral, and then they become roommates, similar to the Golden Girls. So it's kind of a take on that, and it's supposed to be hysterical and fun.
So there'll be a sarcastic one, a slutty one, and an innocent one, that kind of thing?
Assume. I haven't seen it, so, and the stuff that I know, I'm still hush-hush.
Okay, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he'd have to kill us, Tom.
We'll just have to get you drunk.
Yeah,
Yes.
there you go. In a sunken living room.
Yeah.
Around Palm Springs, there are just so many of these wonderful venues that over the years have kind of the rise and fall of them. Certainly in the 50s and the 60s, maybe through about 1975, a lot of celebrities came here and had their homes. And then they went away, it seemed like for a while. You didn't hear about it or until they retired. And now are they starting to come back?
Well, it's a catch-all. So back in the days, in the 40s, 50s, and even up until the 60s, all the celebrities were under contract with the big studios. So they had to be within 200 miles of LA. So they came out here for sun, fun, golf, tennis.
Because this is just inside that limit, right?
It's just inside that limit, and it took a lot longer back then than it does now. Even though now with the traffic it's 2 hours, but they came out for that reason, and they bought homes. And then with the resurgence coming up with the Alexander Construction Company, when they went from class to mass, and they built over 1,200 homes, the tract homes and things like that. All the neighborhoods were smaller, but vacation homes. But the celebrities still had land and whatever, and they had private homes, and they weren't as noticeable. Then COVID hit, and a lot of people, and especially the B and C list celebrities, because they had, apartments and families in LA, they were too small of a space and too close quarters to be there 24/7 with the whole family. They came out here and rented homes, and a lot of them stayed and bought homes and commuted into LA for 3 or 4 days, as opposed to living there full time.
Yeah.
So that really is a fairly recent change, then.
So it is a recent change, and you've got a lot of celebrities building homes here. We just did Kelly, Alive with Kelly and Mark, filmed here for 4 or 5 episodes, I believe. And they bought a beautiful Goldstein house in Rancho Mirage that was already restored, and they were very ecstatic about it. And then I actually was able to get them in to see Neutra, the Kaufman house, because Mark had given her, for her office, which had no windows, her dressing room, for the show, poolside gossip, which she loved.
Yes.
So we actually came out here and did a poolside gossip shot with Kelly and Mark featured in there.
I saw that,
at the Kaufman. So that was
as Nelda Linsk.
As Nelda Linsk. And it was very touching that they loved the architecture and they respected the architecture, and they were as nice as can be, taking shots with the few people that were allowed to come to the thing to do it. But they appreciate the architecture and respected the architecture, and find out they bought a restored home.
Oh, that's great. So they now have a place out here.
They now have a place out here. So that's kind of cool. The Kardashians have a place out here. DiCaprio has a place out here.
He has a bunch of places, doesn't he? Doesn't he have kind of a little real estate empire here now?
Somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And new people are coming out here. And then Jeremy Scott owns the Elrod House and the Steve McQueen, which is and Ron Burkle's got quite a collection. He restored the Bob Hope House, which is stunning, and brought back the infinity pool and made it more of a curve to match the house. So it's quite stunning. And
he brought back Helena Arahuete, who was one of the original architects, to do that.
Yeah, Tim, his manager of all the construction, did an amazing job. Absolutely.
So this is the Bob Hope House that looks like a flying saucer.
Yeah, our volcano house.
Right.
Or the mushroom house.
Right.
It's got the big...
I thought you couldn't get into that house.
He's done a few corporate events, for nonprofits, which is very, very nice.
Yeah.
But he's actually stayed here more than you would expect. But the downstairs, since the last time I saw it, because I did the Louis Vuitton and everything there, is more, to me, warmer. You can actually sit in downstairs, it's all glass enclosed, and read a book, and have like a living space. Upstairs is still a typical Lautner, very cold. To me, it's more cold and open and organic, but stunning views and a great home. Yeah. So
people
hopefully
don't realize when you see photos of this house that it was purpose designed by Bob Hope, because he wanted to have a place to essentially have enough room for a sit-down dinner for about 500. In association with his golf classic, I believe, at the time.
Yeah.
500.
Yes.
Yeah, it can seat a little more than that. But yeah, it was...
For dinner, Tom.
It was a big back then, the celebrities, he did all his radio things and the stuff, so it was a big entertaining. But Dolores had a fight with John Lautner when it was being built, so it was a little contentious with the Lautners.
Yeah, back in Hollywood history, Bob Hope, and I think Bing Crosby, too, were one of the first celebrities to really invest in real estate on a big scale, both in Los Angeles and here.
Yeah.
And did quite well with it. Made more money than they did in their film careers.
Yeah. He did a lot here, and Sinatra and Bing Crosby, and they're restoring the home he has in Rancho Mirage, so hopefully that'll be back up. But Rancho Mirage unfortunately stopped events and things like that. The city.
They did, really?
Yeah,
What happened there?
I can only assume, but there was the Harpo Marx House was one that did events and did some worldwide wrestling thing for like a month, live reality TV show, and they didn't really control the thing, so it was in a small upscale neighborhood, and having porta potties and trucks and things all over the neighborhood 24/7, people talking, and then nobody watching the events. Like here in Palm Springs, I have a security guard out front. I monitor the noise. I monitor parking, because you're not allowed to park all over the neighborhoods and take care of that. Then they decided nobody can do any events. And it's hard for a nonprofit to do an event.
Yeah.
And they've got beautiful properties in Clancy Lane that people have like 10, 12 acres. You wouldn't even know, talk about 1,000 people, or, they've got horses and wouldn't even know you're there, kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting. Each city is different in terms when it comes to events. The same with tours and all of that. There's the good things and the bad thing with Coachella, coming in. Yeah. That brings in a lot of people.
How many people does that bring in now?
God, I'm not sure on that, but that's got to be a couple 100,000.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's massive for the 2 weeks. And this year, Lady Gaga's coming. So
that'll be big.
Yeah, that'll be big. And the Dinah Shore Palm Springs Estate does the Interscope Capitol Records New Music private invitation party for their talent and branding people.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so which is kind of cool. The first year I met Billie Eilish and had no idea who she was.
Wow.
She came in with a little scooter, and my security guy calls me and said, "There's a gal coming with a little scooter." And I said, "You can't bring the scooter in." And the guy goes, "Do you know who that is?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "That's Billie Eilish." And I said, "Nice to meet you, Billie Eilish. You can't bring the scooter in."
Yeah.
And it was her brother. And then the guy came and, she said she wouldn't use the scooter. And she kind of did use the scooter.
Did she want to scoot around the house?
No, in the back on the tennis court. It was just a prop. And then that night, when everywhere closing down and everybody's going to Coachella and they give me a VIP, and I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go there. I'm already exhausted and whatever. I heard her song. They played some of the music, and it was gorgeous. She is beautiful.
Yes, she does.
Nothing like I would have imagined.
Amazing soft voice.
And she was very nice, other than bringing the scooter in. But it's kind of funny. So, and then this year, Lady Gaga, I do know. And hopefully she'll come.
Well, speaking of famous people, you're a big Barry Manilow fan, I understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, I knew him from college days in Philadelphia, going to see him and whatever. And now he's another celebrity that lives here in town and donates a lot of his time and money to different things, especially the school district and the school kids with his Christmas benefit every year. And he opens his house up for political things as well as for nonprofits.
And he was the owner of the Kaufman House for a while.
He actually owned the Kaufman House, which is kind of interesting because it was a small footprint. Yeah.
And I have to suspect he didn't quite know what he had taken on when he bought it, because he didn't seem like the modernist guy.
No, he didn't seem like the modernist guy, and it wasn't decorated like it would fit there, and it was only for a short period of time. But but it's a special house, and it takes a special likeness to have it because it is small. It's not a big entertaining thing. And again, he loves the big parties and things like that, and to do the big charity events and things like that. So so he moved on to different things like that as well.
Yeah, the new couple, the Segrangs, have really done a great job in carrying forward the stewardship of that house.
And they constantly bring in new little pieces. When I did the thing for Kelly and Mark and we were there, they had pieces they found that were original, original replacements, vintage, and put in to bring it back, and even some of the books and the toys and things like that, so things of the period. And they're very private. I'd love to do more photo shoots and things there, but they're very private with their property, and they take care of it and they maintain it, so that's a plus.
And they're Neutra fans. They have another Neutra house in Los Angeles.
Didn't know that.
Yes.
It's great that, that we get people that love the homes and restore them.
And are so committed.
Yeah, and the same with some of the Alexander construction people. People are buying the mid-century homes and actually taking off the garage door, taking off the additional rooms to bring it back to its initial footprint. However, some of the newer buyers and stuff like that, it's just some of the properties, because they're on a smaller footprint, the biggest thing is the size of the kitchen and the size of the primary bathrooms are, you could barely turn around.
If only we'd known
person.
Back in 1958
I know.
what people wanted. Are the garages, have they been added on in these days?
So when they were built, there was never garage doors. They were all carports.
Oh, yeah.
And, even the Shag House did a beautiful They added the front courtyard, and they put the wall and the entranceway, so it just looks totally mid-century, in line with the original architecture. And they actually moved the carport forward and put the den in the old carport.
Oh, okay.
But you couldn't tell the difference. The same with the Kirk Douglas tennis estate. You know, when the Douglases bought it, they had kids, so they needed more bedrooms, and they built the bedrooms onto the front of the house in a sensitive way. But it's also beautiful from the front, as you know,
Yes.
doing many events there.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Kip, how can people get in touch with you if they've got some kind of corporate event or other kind of interesting gig they want to put together?
At kipatlocations760.com. I've got the website with some of the events and things that I've done over time. And then, do you want a telephone? It's up to you.
If they write to you, you'll call them back.
Yeah, I'll call them back.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And what I love about your voicemail, Kip, is that if you dial Kip's phone number,
Yeah.
he'll give you a menu. And it's basically, to reach Kip, dial 1. To reach Kip on something else, dial 2. To reach Kip on this, dial 3.
Yeah.
And if you want Kip personally, dial 4.
Yeah, I've got between the locations, and then I do the photo and film shoots, and then one thing I'll say that's still online today on Showtime is Palm Swings, which was actually shot here, the Skylark.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
a
really?
movie about swingers in the 60s. Was filmed here. This was and Shag did all the artwork and stuff like that for the poster for the film, and then we had Shag all over the thing for one of the big parties, and we filmed at Trio, the Purple Room.
Yeah.
And another beautiful mid-century is the College of the Desert, which could be something interesting to do. Next year, do something out there, because they've got the architects and the theater people and the designers and stuff like that.
Thanks for joining us, Kip.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
That was our conversation with Man About Town, Kip Serafin. Kurt Sear is another one of those men. He's one of the best-known tour guides in Palm Springs. His custom tours bring modernist architecture to life. When not charming visitors, Kurt contributes to Desert Outlook, is co-founder of the creative think tank Salon for the Parched, and the artisan collective Makerville. George spoke with Kurt Sear this year at Modernism Week.
Kurt, you've been doing tours now, I think, if our calculations are correct, for 15 years?
Actually, 10 years.
10 years.
I founded my company Palm Springs Mod Squad in January of 2015. So
Okay.
we're celebrating 10 years here. I've been living full-time here in Palm Springs for 15 years. So I've been an ardent supporter and kind of stumbled into Palm Springs in the late 1980s when I was a design student in Los Angeles. So we would come out sort of the heydays of spring break of the 1980s and fell in love with the desert and had homes here since 1999. And then we moved full-time out here in 2010.
So you were really kind of an early settler.
Well, you know what's really interesting, George, is all these terms that we use, mid-century and the Alexanders and all this architectural jargon that Palm Springs is really known for, when we first started looking for a home out here, none of that had been invented. The term mid-century design had not been coined.
Yeah.
And it was rather frustrating.
It was just houses.
It was just houses, and we were trying to explain to our real estate agent that we were looking for a house with a flat roof and sliding glass doors that opened onto the swimming pool. And they said, oh, no, you don't want that. Those aren't insulated, and they're single pane glass, and you have to do a lot of remodeling on it. And it's like, no, that's exactly what we want. And little did I know at the time, we're talking almost 30 years ago, that indeed Palm Springs would become, the mecca for all of this architecture.
How do people hear about Palm Springs by and large from all the thousands of people that you've taken on tours?
Well, Palm Springs, and I think kind of desert in general, has really been in the zeitgeist for about the last decade. It's a very magical place, with Coachella, the music festivals, a lot of art. So the whole sort of desert landscape has really been in the forefront of design and culture. And along with it, the architecture of Palm Springs has been really, I guess, rediscovered or reappreciated. And so here in the desert, we have a specific type of architecture called desert modernism. It's also referred to as the Palm Springs School. This architecture was basically architecture for relaxation, where, a lot of Hollywood celebrities would come out to get away from the city. But also, there were a lot of Midwesterners, wealthy Midwesterners, industrial titans, who would build their winter homes here. And so there was a lot of money that came out to the desert to create this incredible architecture that was basically fantasy holiday architecture. And that's really what I think clinched Palm Springs as a architectural destination.
Also, around that time, the restoration of the Kaufman House by Richard Neutra was getting a lot of press.
Right. George, I think the thing that happened was very serendipitous. The history of Palm Springs is kind of a roller coaster. It had its heydays, and then it hit some deep troughs. And fortunately, those troughs are what saved Palm Springs architecturally. I like to refer to it as preservation through neglect and preservation through indifference. Because in the architectural realm, after a building is about 30 or 40 years old, it can look really dated, and chances are it's going to get a wholesale remodel or maybe even just torn down. But that didn't happen in Palm Springs. This is called the Valley of Ugly in the architectural parlance. And Palm Springs survived that because it had become so unfashionable, it wasn't worthy of tearing down because it was too expensive. It was much easier to build new houses further down in the desert. So
more profitable too.
Yeah, and our architecture basically sat in amber for about 25 years to be rediscovered in the early 1990s. And so it's around 50 years is when people start looking at the past and seeing new possibilities with it. And right on time, the early 90s, mid-century design started the green sprouts of rediscovery here in the desert.
One of the first things that people see when they come to Palm Springs, if they fly, is the airport, which is a mid-century modern marvel itself.
Yeah, beautiful airport, 1964, designed by Donald Wexler. Wexler is quite a beloved architect here in town. He was responsible for a lot of beautiful buildings here in town, not only the airport, but also schools. He did the Cree Elementary School in the mid-1960s. So not only is it private residential architecture, but also public architecture. It carries the hallmarks of really good design. And Wexler's probably also known very famously for his steel development houses that he designed at the north end of town. These are now National Register properties.
I understand the airport's going to expand significantly here. Do you know if they've chosen an architect for that yet?
I don't know about new architects. I know Gensler and Associates did the addition in the 90s. We have very active preservation groups out here, so I think we're going to be keeping an eye on what is happening with the airport, because with the popularity of Palm Springs, we're getting a lot of tourism, and that airport is getting a lot of work out. And so I think expansion is going to be required, but it's really important to maintain the integrity of the original design, which is there fully realized. But hopefully the city understands how important the architecture is here to the city and its identity, that they will continue to help nurse that legacy and bring it forward without mimicry, but actually new innovative designs that are in the spirit of the architectural history we have here in the city.
Just an impossible standard.
Well, it sounds like it, doesn't it? But we can hope.
We like our cake fully decorated and consume all of it.
That's right.
As people come here and find a place to stay in Palm Springs, sometimes they have a car, sometimes they don't. What are kind of the main streets of Palm Springs that people want to make sure they walk down and visit?
Well, of course, we have downtown. Actually, the downtown area of Palm Springs is divided into three sections. We have the Uptown Design District, which was a redevelopment zone. It was about 20 years ago. That's filled with a lot of restaurants, bars, shops, art galleries, a really artistic design part of the city. Then just a little south of Vallejo, this is all on North Palm Canyon.
Yeah, that's the main
street.
The
main street is Palm Canyon, and then Indian Canyon is also the next street over. But then we have downtown, which is a little more touristy. That's where the La Plaza Theater is, which is under restoration. There's a lot of restaurants and theaters and shops and bars, again, in downtown. And then just a little bit further south, we have the financial district. we have a lot of incredibly beautiful financial institutions and bank buildings that were designed by our local architects. So there's a whole section of South Palm Canyon that's filled with incredible bank buildings as well.
Yeah, those bank buildings, some of them are still banks, and I know some of them have been repurposed as other things. There's a big wine store, I think, in one of them.
Yes. We have probably my favorite building in the city is previously a bank. It's the Santa Fe Savings Bank by Stu Williams, 1960. It is now our Architectural and Design Pavilion Museum, part of the Palm Springs Art Museum. It's just an incredible, beautiful building, probably my second favorite in the world, definitely my first favorite here in the city.
I know that there's a fun little building here, the only modernist Kentucky Fried Chicken in America, which closed recently.
Unfortunately. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. That was actually purpose-built. And for years, the city of Palm Springs did not allow for national corporate food brands in the city limits.
Really?
Yeah. And when they started relaxing that requirement, that must have been in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they decided if they were going to allow for corporate food brands, they needed to do programmatic architecture that related to the architecture of the city. And so it's also job creation for local architects. So we have a very interesting KFC that essentially is a bit of a witty send-up of our tram gas station, which is now our visitor center, that Albert Frey designed in '64 at the north end of town.
Were there any other purpose-built fast food places besides KFC?
Well, there was a Jack in the Box that was more kind of a Spanish. And then the newer McDonald's down on East Palm Canyon has a bit of a butterfly roof and the catenary arches on the side. So some interpretation with using Palm Springs signature elements and their corporate branding. So it's a bit of a mashup.
Okay. Now, when people are here, there's lots to do.
Sure.
The shopping you were talking about, there are fabulous restaurants all around, and there are various tours. You run a tour operation.
I do.
So
indeed.
what are some of the things that you take people to see on your tours?
Well, I have 3 different tours that I do daily. I have an interior tour. We go into 3 different houses. The houses that we go into are not celebrity homes. These are actually homes that people live in. So you get a really a nice slice of life of what it's like to live a modern life in mid-century architecture. We also have the Essential Tour, which is an exterior tour of the city. And in that's basically our kind of 411 informational tour. So whether you are an architectural aficionado or just a newbie, by the time you're finished with the tour, you'll have a really good understanding of what our architecture is all about. So it's not only just architecture, there's a little bit of celebrity, but it's architecturally focused. There's a little bit of Hollywood, but also a bit of the history of the city as well. So it gives you a really good background and understanding of why, how, who in Palm Springs.
Yes.
And then my gossip tour, of course, is the Martini Tour, the Rat Pack Tour. So it's the intersection of Palm Springs, Las Vegas, the Rat Pack, the Kennedys, the Mafia, and then we go to
Sonny Bono. Right?
Well, Sonny isn't in this one. This is more 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we go out for about an hour, and then it concludes at Melvin's, where we have a martini, and I regale my modernistas with all my gin and martini knowledge.
That's excellent.
Yeah, it's a really fun tour. Yeah.
So are you taking people around? Is it a walking tour? Are they on a vehicle of some kind?
Well, we have the Mod Squad van, which is a minivan. So the Palm Springs Mod Squad tours are intimate tours. We take 5 in a minivan, so you're not on a huge bus. So you have a much more intimate experience.
Does your van, is it like the Partridge Family? Is it a Mondrian thing? Or what does your van look like?
No, well, this one is just a gray one with a nice Mod Squad signage on the side. So I do also do larger tours. A lot of times I'll have groups come in and we'll get larger coaches for corporate events and such. But my daily tours are intimate, so my modernistas really have a personal sense of what the city is, and they can ask questions, and it's a very small group tours.
Okay. And I'm sure you take people out to the tramway gas station at some point to show them this very unique building.
Yeah, it's probably the signature building when you really think of Palm Springs, and it really is such an incredible, welcoming sign when you drive in from, let's say, Los Angeles. You turn off the freeway onto 111, and as you start entering the Coachella Valley, there it is, right at the base of Mount San Jacinto, this hyperparaboloid roof line that it looks like it's about ready to, take off. It's like a jet wing.
And who designed that?
That's Albert Frey and Robson Chambers.
Okay.
And that was originally built as the Enco gas station. So you can imagine in 1964, when that was completed, that was a very welcome sight as you're driving in and you see the gas needle is almost on empty, and it's like, oh, I've arrived in paradise and there's a gas station here.
And that's on the way to the tramway.
Correct, yes.
Which takes people up into the mountains. I've always been fascinated with the history of that. That was built in the 60s.
Right.
And how did they decide to build a tramway in the desert?
Well, we're in a very interesting situation. The landscape here is quite remarkable because essentially Palm Springs is the bottom of a prehistoric inland sea. And geologically, we are where a rift and a fault are occurring. So we have two tectonic plates colliding. The San Andreas Fault's just on the other side of the 10 freeway. So we have a very, very flat landscape, and then these mountains just soar out of the valley edge. And I believe it was in the 1940s is when the first inkling of creating a tramway began. And then there was I think it was a little bit before World War II, and then shortly after World War II, they started really looking into it, and it was finally completed in the early 60s. But it's an engineering marvel, and it's just an amazing way to see the valley because we're so flat here in the valley. When you can get up in the mountains, the San Jacinto Mountains, and look down at the valley, it's quite a spectacular view to have the city and the valley lying out at your feet.
And there's about a, 30-degree difference in temperature?
Yes, it's sometimes even more. It's not uncommon to have snow up there when it's like 80 degrees down here. The floor of the valley, depending where you are, is anywhere from about 400 to 500 feet at elevation. And when you're at the tram at the top of Mount San Jacinto, it's over 8,500 feet. So, it's about 8,000 feet elevation change in about 20 minutes. So it's very, very dramatic.
I remember growing up when the tramway premiered.
Mm-hmm.
It was on a lot of TV shows.
Sure.
The one I remember specifically, I think, was Mannix, where Mike Connors was chasing some bad guy up the tramway.
Sure. Yeah.
And back then, these were little tiny cars. Mm-hmm. They've replaced them since then with very elegant Swiss-made
Yeah,
cars.
And they rotate. They're quite large, quite beautiful. I mean, it's quite breathtaking to take the tram up. And it's such a startling difference between the desert floor and then you're in an alpine mountain forest.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming by and talking with me, Kurt.
Well, thank you so much, George. It's great to be here.
You can reach Kurt at psmodsquad.com. Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. All right, Tom, let's go.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 25,000 significant modernist houses, and access 5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Courageous is her middle name, or it could be Cornelia. We should ask. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another carefully archived edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.